Hey, what's going on, friends, fight fans, and degenerate gamblers? I am John Lee, and this is my UFC 205 breakdown, which I'm super excited to get to because it's one of, if not the best cards on paper ever put together. First time in New York, my adopted city that I lived in for 5 years, and I'm so excited for this fight card. Featuring a legitimate super fight, only what, 4.5 years after the year of the super fight? So that's super exciting. It's got the biggest star in MMA history, Conor McGregor, going against the guy who was kind of the ultimate MMA nomad in Eddie Alvarez, who finally came to the UFC and defied the curse of the outside UFC champion by actually winning the belt. So super excited, a lot to get to. I have 6 fight breakdowns for you, a lot of fight gambling picks. But first, let's hear a word from our sponsor. This episode of John's MMA Breakdown is brought to you by Is This Fighter Racist or Drunk? A brand new game show joining UFC's Fight Pass in early 2017. Is This Fighter Racist or Drunk will answer the age-old question of whether a fighter who wears a cowboy hat, endorses Donald Trump, now President-elect Donald Trump, and has had several racially charged encounters with African-American fighters such as Bobby Green and recently Aljamain Sterling, is a racist, or if he's just drunk and having fun and you guys are totally overreacting. Tune in for our first episode when John Vellante will try to explain why Donald Cerrone uses the N-word around black fighters, but it's totally okay, guys. It's totally okay, and he's not a racist. He's just having fun. You won't want to miss Is This Fighter Racist? Monday at 3 a.m., only on the Fight Pass Network. This photo he put up, Donald Cerrone put up for Martin Luther King Day. As you can see, some of the guys are fighting, are playing along with the gag, but I just invite you to look at this guy's face, and this guy's face, and this guy's face. None of them appear to feel that this joke is particularly funny, and not the first time or the last time Donald Cerrone would be accused of shenanigans. And, if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck. Anyway, welcome to my UFC 205 breakdown. First, let's recap my picks from the last event, Tony Ferguson versus Rafael dos Anjos, UFC Fight Night 311, Latin America, Peru finale. I went 2-2, bringing my record to a sterling 9-8 over the last 8 events. It's very, very impressive. I know. I sometimes I sit and look at my 46% winning percentage, and I think, man, what could have been? What could have been? The bets I won were Tony Ferguson plus 130 and Ricardo Lamas minus 110. Tony Ferguson's so awesome, man, and he's weird. I love weird in all aspects of life. Especially weird performers. I loved Cam Newton before he went all lives matter. And I love Outkast, Andre 3000. Prince is one of my favorite all-time artists. So I really appreciate weird. And Tony Ferguson's so weird, man. And he's crazy and he's tough. And yeah, man, that guy's a problem. Him and Khabib, whoever wins that, it's really up for grabs who's going to be the lightweight champion for a while, because I don't think anyone besides those two is beating those two. But we will find out this weekend when Khabib fights Michael Johnson. That's what they call a spoiler alert in the biz, kids. We'll get to that in a minute. I lost my parlay of Magomedov, Grasso, and Perez. Looking back, I was almost going to hedge on Dariush after I hit those first two, and I really should have, because that was just a weird pick. I just overrated the Dagestani/Russian guys because of Khabib, and maybe they're all overrated, including Khabib, possibly. And I also lost Ferg by sub, which I just threw that out there because it was a good line, and Ferguson catches weird subs. So overall, I won 0.8 units, yay, which brings me to 1.1 units lifetime over the last 8 events that I'm up. It's pretty exciting stuff. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter at John's Crazy Life and like my Facebook page, facebook.com/JohnLeeMMA. All right, let's get started. As always, before we get started, I will give you my picks because I know some of you don't want to listen to me talk and you just want to know what I'm gambling on, so you can either use it as reinforcement for your own confirmation bias for your bets, or maybe you find that I have a good bet that you like. So this week I'm betting a parlay of Joanna, Tate, and Edgar for 1 unit at plus 152. I think I'm actually going to sub Edgar for Cerrone. I made this PowerPoint yesterday, and I've been thinking about it. So Edgar or Cerrone. Cerrone would have better odds, obviously. And then a parlay of the Wonder Man and Khabib. I think those are solid bets, but there's legitimate arguments to be made for the underdog in both of those. So rather than make like a 5-fight parlay and really sweat it out, I'm going to just centralize my risk because I believe in both of those guys, but you'll hear my arguments for the other guys that have made me want to section that action off. And yeah, they're both overpriced, so can't just bet them straight. And then Alvarez for 1 unit at best price. Currently it's plus 140. I'd like to get at least plus 150. I don't feel super confident in that bet either. That's a very close fight. But I think getting points on Alvarez is a good bet, unless Conor knocks him out, in which case you'll look dumb. I'll look dumb. So 3 units wagered to win 3.9 units. I'm also going to break down Wonder Man Woodley, Romero Weidman, Pennington Tate, Edgar Stevens, Cowboy Gastelum, and the main event. Fun stuff. All right, let's jump right into the main event. A legitimate super fight between the lightweight champion Eddie Alvarez and the featherweight champion Conor McGregor. So this is a really close fight, man. This is an awesome fight. There's a lot of unknowns. This is like everything you want as a fight fan and be worth your money, and your time is here. We haven't seen McGregor at 155 in the UFC yet. He was the 155 champion in Cage Warriors or whatever that European promotion is called, but I think he only fought 1 time there before coming up to the UFC, and he was fighting a lot at 145. So who knows how he's going to look. I'm guessing his power is not going to translate the same way it does to 145, but it'll probably be a little better than it was at 170, where it was still good enough to floor Nate Diaz 3 times in the second fight. Whether or not Diaz was kind of diving, who knows, but he was definitely getting caught and getting knocked down. I don't think he was super hurt, but he was definitely getting knocked down. Versus, just the X unknown factor of McGregor's wrestling, man. It's looked bad every time we see it. I just rewatched McGregor Diaz 2, and Nate Diaz can't wrestle for shit. No newsflash there. But there were a lot of bad positions that Conor was in where he could have just been dumped if he were fighting either Dos Anjos or Alvarez. And on the ground, he really has shown nothing ever except holding on, elbowing Chad Mendes in the face, and begging for stand-ups. So I don't really think that if it goes to the ground, he's going to do particularly well. And Eddie Alvarez is a smothering wrestler. He's good at that. He's strong. He's big. He's going to be stronger and bigger than McGregor, like width-wise. But McGregor's taller and has more reach. McGregor has like 5 inches of reach. It's a big reach advantage, especially for someone who fights long like Conor McGregor versus someone who darts in like Eddie Alvarez. McGregor's got the age advantage. He's also got the pace advantage, throwing about 12.5 strikes per minute. But Alvarez throws a high pace as well. He throws about 9.5 strikes a minute, which is like the mark for a quote-unquote high-paced fighter. So, he's outpaced, but not by that much. Camp, I think Alvarez is a better camp. He's obviously fought better competition. The questions, wrestling, power at 155, and all these unknowns about Conor McGregor, right? Like, I love Nate Diaz, but Nate Diaz is not a top 155er. He's a top 10 guy. He's not a top 5 guy. And he can't wrestle, right? So McGregor fought Mendes, who was way smaller, coming on a super, short camp, and got blasted off his feet. Now, I don't think Eddie is the same kind of blast double and is the same kind of athlete that Mendes is, but I do think Eddie can take him down. Basically, this is going to come down to Eddie Alvarez, who gets hit a lot and dropped pretty frequently in his fights, versus McGregor, who's got power and accuracy, but, can't really wrestle. So my thinking is if McGregor's going to win, he's going to win it in the first 2 rounds. He's going to knock Alvarez out. I don't really think he's going to win a decision. He's obviously not going to sub Alvarez. So basically, I'm saying it's not a puncher's chance because there are tactical things that Alvarez does. He's not very good at leading, while Conor's a really good counterer. He throws the same combo that Aldo was kind of throwing when he got knocked out by that backstepping left hand. He gets hit a lot. He does that dart in from the right, where he throws a right hand and then darts out on an angle, which kind of opens his head up to be hit. He likes that right body shot to the stomach. All of the things that make sense say McGregor, but I just don't buy it, man. I just don't think he's as good as he says he is. And maybe I'm a hater, and maybe I'll be proved wrong. God knows I've been wrong before about Aldo and Diaz the second time with McGregor. But he's going to have to keep showing me. If he beats Alvarez and becomes the champion, and Alvarez is a really good matchup for him. I think Dos Anjos was a much worse matchup. The next two are nightmares. Like, I don't think he has a 10% chance of winning against Khabib or Tony Ferguson. Like, either of those dudes, if he wins this fight, the next dude is going to take him out. So, this is the best matchup for him possibly at 155. A little bit product of timing. He definitely could win, and then it'll go down as the first guy to hold two belts simultaneously, which is true, but he also kind of picked the right matchups, which is smart, man. Like, he's a genius about handling his career, He's very similar to Mayweather in a lot of things, personality-wise. The money stuff, the gambling that he's kind of gotten away from. But early in his career, he was always talking about gambling, the flashiness. He doesn't fight like Mayweather at all. But personality-wise, he's drawing stuff from a lot of people. But it's good. I'm just going to bet against him. I'm probably going to lose, though, honestly. Like, I might even, not pull this bet. I'm waiting for better odds. I want at least 150. If I'm not getting 1.5 to 1, I'm not going to bet on it. But I'm thinking that the Irish money will flood in, and I might even be able to get, plus 200, which would be sweet. Also, factoring into this, I'm doing the EA Sim. Justin Golightly of champions.co wrote some article about how the simulations have been 73% correct. I don't know how accurate that is. I'm not saying it's not accurate, but I don't know what the settings were, or, who knows, or what the sample size was. But I've started to just sim all of these just as another data point, and that came up with Alvarez by decision. So, again, there's a good chance Conor gets him early. I think he's definitely going to get dropped, but I believe that he'll come back from getting dropped. He'll probably be down 1 or 2 rounds, and then he'll wrestle and kind of put the pace on McGregor, and he'll either win a 48-47 decision or stop him with a sub or ground and pound, because I think McGregor is going to tire after not finishing him, and that's how it's going to go. But this is a pick-em, man. I'm just taking the plus money. I can make arguments both ways, so we'll see. Great fight, though. Really awesome matchmaking. All right, next co-main event. Wonder Man versus Tyron Woodley. I refuse to call someone who's 34 a boy. Shout out to the co-main event podcast. So this one, I think, comes down to a couple of things. Advantages, camp, Wonder Man's with Mark Henry and co. They're a great camp. Tyron Woodley jumps around. He's at Rufus Sport, then he's at ATT, then he's at his own ATT in St. Louis. Don't like that. Southpaw, Wonder Man is a southpaw. Fight IQ, it's not that Wonder Man has the best fight IQ. I mean, he's pretty good. He makes adjustments. He's smart about winning rounds. It's just that Woodley has a bad fight IQ, or did. It's hard to tell because he had that big break where he didn't fight Johnny Hendricks and then he knocked out Lawler. And if you hear Tyron Woodley speak, he's very smart about training. He seems like he really goes the extra mile like GSP used to. When it comes to preparing, he brings in world-class karate guys. He brings in guys and kind of builds his camp. He spends money. He's definitely prepared. But I don't know, man. I've just seen him make so many questionable fight decisions and not get off the fence so much and be happy to just kind of sit there that it's hard for me to give him that. Wrestling, obviously, Woodley. Power, Woodley. Athleticism, Woodley. Woodley's a freak athlete, man. He's probably I feel like him, Aldo, Chad Mendez, Yoel Romero. I'm trying to think of who else is just a freak athlete. Those are the ones that stand out at first glance as just being holy crap, Here's the questions, though. Is Wonder Man tough? Okay, so my good friend Patrick Wyman of Heavy Hands he said he thinks Wonderboy has some of the dog in him, and he thinks he's seen him fight back, and I have to respectfully disagree. I think Wonderman is very tactical. He's very technical. He knows what to do in positions. He doesn't just give up. He's not weak. He doesn't fold. But that Nashan Burrell fight, man, Nashan really roughed him up. Like, to me, that's the fight. That and the Matt Brown fight, both fairly early in his career. He won the Nashan Burrell fight, but he wouldn't have won that fight if it were 5 rounds. He was dead at the end of that fight. Like, Nashan roughed him up in the clinch, beat him up with knees to the body, like, tired him out, and put a real beating on him in the 3rd round. Yeah, I mean, this one's tough. There is a method to victory here for Woodley. He probably even knows what it is. I think Woodley knows more about fighting than I do. But I don't know if Woodley's going to be able to do it. But I think if he clinches and if he's willing to lose a round, maybe even 2, to really tire Wonderboy out. Like, what he needs to focus on is not so much like taking him down and smothering him, because Woodley doesn't have great ground and pound, especially for someone who has really good power. He's not super dangerous on the ground, but, I mean, it'll be tiring. But he needs to keep him in the clinch. Watch that Burrell fight. Watch the Matt Brown fights where they rough him up. They roughhouse him. They're cross-facing him. I would hit him low. I would poke him in the eye. If I were Woodley, I would take my 2 championship fouls, right? Like GSP used to do the championship nut shot. I would for sure take the championship nut shot right away with the big right kick. Woodley's got some power. Like, oh, I slipped on an inside low kick, but really take the low shot. I'd poke Wonderboy in the eyes. I'd be real dirty. Grab the fence, like to hold him in place. Rough him up. Hit to the back of the head. Because I think that's the thing. And it's similar to Raymond Daniels. I just question karate guys' toughness. Machida, I think same thing with Machida. When John Jones and Luke Rockhold really roughed him up, Machida kind of didn't have what it took to go there. Raymond Daniels, 2 times, Nicky Holtzkin trapped him in the corners, beat him up, palmed him, healed him, and Daniels folded both times. And, he definitely folded against Matt Brown. Nashan Burrell, he won that fight, and, it wasn't like Nashan, beat him up. I said put a beating on him last. That's an overstatement. But, I mean, he did body work. He landed knees. He hurt him. And Wonderboy was done at the end of that fight. So there is a path to victory here. I just don't know if Woodley can follow it. I think Woodley might be too content to kind of try to blitz Wonderboy, which I think Wonderboy will be too good at stepping to the side of to get clipped. I mean, he could get clipped, absolutely. Woodley's super fast, I mean, Lawler thought he had distance and didn't. So it could happen. I just don't think it's going to. I actually think this fight's going to be kind of boring. I think it's going to be similar to the Rory fight, where Woodley can't really get anything going. He blitzes a few times, but then as the fight goes on, the blitzes become slower, and Wonderboy just piles up points, wins a unanimous decision, maybe 49-46 or 50-45, similar to the Rory fight. I'm throwing, like I said, there is the danger. This is why I'm not putting this in my main parlay, because Woodley, all he has to do is land one. He's super fast, super powerful. Again, more than a puncher's chance. I think they say a puncher's chance is 12 to 15%. There's probably a 20-25% chance that Woodley can knock Wonderboy out. And then, there's probably another 15% maybe chance that he could rough him up and beat him up in the clinch and on the ground and win a decision. But I think 60, by the odds, a minus 200 favorite is expected to win 66% of the time, and I think that's low for Stephen Thompson. I think Stephen Thompson probably wins this fight 75-80% of the time by decision. I don't know if he's going to knock him out. I don't really think I don't think he's going to. I think he's probably just going to win a decision here. I like the Wonderboy by decision bet. I just don't want to go through the annoyance of putting more money in my online account. Because my bank is Wells Fargo, and they just don't let you do online gambling. Fun. Maybe the new president can fix that. That'd be something that would help my life and bring revenue in. My pick here, Stephen Thompson by decision. Chris Weidman versus Yoel Romero. So this is a really good fight. This easily could have been the middleweight championship fight last year. If Rockhold didn't throw that stupid spinning wheel kick right now. But, advantages age Weidman. Weidman's 32. Yoel's 39. Weidman might be 33, but Yoel's 39 and hasn't fought in a while. Both these guys are coming off layoffs. Weidman had the pile of trash neck surgery. Yoel had the drug thing. I don't know, man. This is a close fight. Weidman has reach, 5 inches or so. Romero's a southpaw. Weidman's actually done well against southpaws in Anderson Silva, Machida, and Vitor. But all of those guys were kind of on the downslide, and I don't think we can say Yoel Romero is on the downslide right now. He appears to be every bit the freak athlete he's always been. Athleticism, Romero. The big questions here, Weidman's defense and chin. Weidman really uses distance for defense a lot, and he's not that fast. So as someone who is a guy who used defense as a bad kickboxer in sparring and is not that fast, that's not a good combination. And, a lot of time also he'll just go to double guard. He just shelled up when Vitor was, throwing at him. He just shelled up against Machida in the 4th round and the very end of the 5th round. That's not going to work against Yoel Romero. But Yoel Romero is really low volume, and he's weird and crazy. So the other X factor is what weird Yoel Romero thing is going to happen in this fight. Is it going to be a spinning back fist knockdown? Is it going to be him grabbing the cage? Is it going to be him shitting himself? Is it going to be him sitting on the stool for too long? Is it going to be him, jumping out of the cage in the middle of the fight? Who knows, man? Weird stuff happens with Yoel Romero. And Yoel Romero is down to cheat, man. So, the Dundasso school is strong. And I don't know if Chris Weidman's doing that. Chris Weidman, he's a pressure fighter. He's going to come forward. He's going to score points. I don't know if he'll be able to get takedowns. It's weird. The Yoel Romero takedown thing is strange because sometimes he gives up takedowns and sometimes he shucks guys off and it's like an ant tried to take down an elephant. So I don't know. My guess is he'll probably get a couple, but he's probably not going to be able to take Yoel down at will. Yeah, man, this is a tough one. I would lean Romero, again, because it's pretty much a pick'em and you're getting plus money. I also think there's a better chance that Romero finishes Weidman than Weidman finishes Romero because Romero had Jacare on top of him while he was gassed and didn't get submitted. So I think we can throw the submission out both ways on this. I think could Chris TKO Yoel? He could. Rafael Cavalcante did it. That was a long time ago in Strikeforce, but it did happen. I think Yoel could definitely get him the other way. I think it's more likely Yoel gets him. So the thing with Yoel, though, is Yoel has a lot of third-round finishes, too. He finished Brunson in the 3rd. He finished terrible person Tim Kennedy in the 3rd. So this is tough, man. I just say take the underdog or pass. Yeah, I mean, I could see Chris Weidman, using range, using point scoring, landing a key takedown here or there to seal a 29-28 decision in a very close fight. And he is fighting at home, so you got to figure the decision will probably go his way if it's close. I don't know, though, man. I've never been the biggest Chris Weidman fan. I was there when he knocked out Anderson Silva at 162. Those are both kind of weird wins. The 162 one's less weird, but it's still weird because Anderson was fucking around so much. And then the other one with the leg rig, super weird. The Machida fight's not impressive considering the way Machida just got manhandled by Rockhold and Yoel Romero afterwards. I know MMA math doesn't work like that, and Machida was on the downward cycle, but I don't know. I go with Yoel, but wouldn't be surprised if Chris won a decision, even a contentious decision. Yoel has won some fights where it's been close. Like the Jacare fight, so he might be due for a bad one here. And he's also undefeated in the UFC, and everyone loses in the UFC at some point. So the EA Sim had Romero, but I'm going to go with them. All right, Cowboy, Donald Trump supporter versus Kelvin Gastelum. So this is an interesting fight as well. I never buy Donald Cerrone. I always think that he's about to get beaten, even though he only loses to top 5 guys and very rarely. I think he's 18-4 in the UFC or something pretty impressive. Gastelum, he's good. He's still kind of a prospect. This could either be his signature win or it could be a too much too soon situation. Right now, I'm leaning towards it being too much too soon. Gastelum has the age advantage, wrestling advantage. He is a southpaw. Cowboy has a little bit of reach. He's a little bit taller. Definitely has the experience and the quality opposition advantage. So what are the questions? First, King's game plan for Cowboy. Kings have gone up against Cowboy with Rafael dos Anjos, who is not a dissimilar fighter to Kelvin Gastelum, a pressuring, hard striking southpaw, and they've won twice. Cowboy, the book on Cowboy has always been pressure him, get to him early. He's a quote-unquote slow starter. Get in his face, crowd him, don't let him get his distance striking game going. Gastelum could definitely do that. But Gastelum has a low fight IQ, man. You watch that Tyron Woodley fight, you watch the Neil Magny fight, and yeah, you could say Magny surprised him with his wrestling, but Donald Cerrone is a better wrestler than Neil Magny. So I think that while I have Gastelum listed with the wrestling advantage, that's really kind of only theoretically in that he is a quote-unquote wrestler, whereas Donald Cerrone isn't. But Donald Cerrone at 170, his wrestling, those duck-under takedowns have looked great against Cote and Oliveira and even Rick Story, man. Ducked under on Rick Story real early, put him down, got back up, and murked him. But, yeah, man, I just think Cowboy. The EA sim was Cowboy. I know Cowboy generally tends to lose to these pressure guys, but I just don't think Gastelum's going to be good at that. I think it's too soon. I think he's too green. Cowboy chews up these prospects, man. Remember Miles Jury? Miles Jury literally had to drop a weight class after that, embarrassment. I made a lot of money on that fight because I trained at the gym Miles Jury was training at. He was splitting between Alliance and Victory, and his coach was this guy Tony, who was basically a mechanic who somehow became a striking coach. And so I just faded Miles Jury a bunch of times once I got to that gym. And, yeah, I knew Cowboy was going to just destroy him on the ground. And that's what happened. And I think Cowboy by sub is a pretty good prop bet here if you're so inclined. But, yeah, I think Cowboy is going to stop young Kelvin Gastelum here. And this will kind of be the high water mark for 170 Cowboy. Because I think when he gets into the top four with Maya, Woodley, Wonderman, and who am I forgetting here? I know I'm forgetting somebody at 170 who's a killer. But, yeah, he's going to get in with those guys, and it's going to be a bad situation. So this is the high water mark for Cowboy. I think he smokes Gastelum, starts getting that title shot buzz a little bit, and then fights like Damian Maia or something and just gets murked. Raquel Pennington versus Miesha Tate. This is to me, this is a bounce-back gimme fight for Miesha Tate. I don't think Raquel Pennington is particularly impressive. She got thrown around by Jessica Andrade, who's a 115 fighter. Body lock takedown, tossed multiple times. And she submitted her in that fight, but, she was so much bigger and was getting thrown around. Miesha's not going to have any problem wrestling her. Miesha has the experience, the camp. Pennington splits her time between ATT, where she's her girlfriend, fiance, I'm not sure. Tisha Torres is there, and she's also out of Colorado. And if there's one thing I know, it is to fade fighters from Colorado when they fight top 5 or top 10 opposition. They are called that Grudge Elevation fight team. Outside of TJ Dillashaw, they all do terribly against top 5, top 10 opposition. Your Matt Browns, your Magnies, your Kat Zanganos, all those people. They just don't do well against top competition. That Grudge Elevation team is very good against the middle, but against the top they don't do well, and that's Rocky's main team. So I'm going to say Miesha gets her bounce back here. The only reason to bet against Miesha here is if you think that Pennington has improved as much as Miesha has slipped. I think Miesha slipped a little, and Pennington's improved a lot, but not enough to close that gap. Not enough. Pennington will not be able to defend takedowns. I think Miesha wins probably a 30-27 or 29-28 decision. She probably gets hit hard, maybe even dropped at one point by Rocky because she's Miesha Tate, and that's what she does. Or she knocks Rocky down, right? Miesha's weird on the feet, man. Nunez put it on her, but Pennington is no Nunez. So I think Misha bounces back, gets back in the win column, back in the mix at 135, and I'm putting her in a parlay. Frankie Edgar versus a dead guy. I don't know how they got Jeremy Stevens' corpse licensed in New York, but apparently the new legislation is not as good as they think it is. Stevens has a slight reach advantage, 3 inches, I think. Camp, Edgar, Mark Henry guys also, Alliance guys where Stevens trains also do not do well against the top 10, especially in the women's 115 where they're 0-6 against top 10. But yeah, Alliance, another one of those camps that does well against the middle and then doesn't do well at the top. Pace, Frankie. Experience, Frankie. Wrestling, Frankie. This is the only way Frankie loses this fight is if he shows up old. And it'll happen at one point. You know, he's 35. He's been in 25 fights now. But here's a crazy thing about Frankie Edgar. So Frankie Edgar has 5 losses. 2 of those to Jose Aldo, 2 of those to Benson Henderson, 1 to Gray Maynard. That's it. And he had a tie against Gray Maynard, and he beat Gray Maynard. In my opinion, he won the second Benson Henderson fight. He didn't win either of the Aldo fights. I'm not a crazy Frankie Edgar fan. I love Frankie Edgar. He's my favorite fighter. The second Maynard fight is my favorite MMA fight of all time, the draw. But I'm not insane. Like, I don't think he beat Benson the first time. It's close, but Benson did more damage. And I don't think he beat Aldo either of those 2 times. You have to explain that when you tell people Frankie Edgar's your favorite fighter, because a lot of Frankie Edgar fans are fucking crazy. There were people on Twitter who thought Aldo won that fight at UFC 200, or who thought that Frankie Edgar won that fight at UFC 200, which is nuts. Nuts. But, you know, unless Stevens times a perfect knee or uppercut and Edgar has gotten old and his chin's gone overnight, I think this is Frankie's to win. He might even finish Stevens, man. He's been finishing all those dudes. He finished Cub Swanson, who, you know, on a little bit of a downward slope, but Swanson beat Stevens. Again, no MMA math. But he finished Chad Mendez. You know, he finished... I know he had another finish at 145. I'm trying to think of who it was. But, yeah, I just don't think... I think Frankie's going to be movement. He's going to be too much pace, too much wrestling. Once they're on the floor, Stevens is not good on his back. So I wouldn't be surprised if Frankie gets like a late submission maybe, or wins a clear 30-27 decision. And the EA Sim agreed with me. I'm throwing Frankie in a parlay. Though I might switch him with Cerrone because of the odds, because Frankie's like, besides Joanna, he's the second heaviest favorite. He's like a minus 340 favorite. All right, so that's going to wrap up our video. In this video, I looked over 6 fights: Alvarez-McGregor, Wonderman versus Woodley, Weidman versus Romero, Cerrone versus Gastelum, Miesha Tate versus Raquel Pennington, and Jeremy Stevens, Corpse versus Frankie Edgar. I made the following plays: Alvarez at 150 or better, parlay of Khabib and Wonderman, parlay of Edgar, Pennington, and Tate. I didn't break down the Khabib-MJ fight because I was already breaking down 6 fights. I just don't. I know a lot of people are picking MJ, and MJ is really good, but I just think it's recency bias because we saw him knock out Poirier. Poirier is not Khabib. Khabib has a chin. Khabib forces the action. Khabib's not going to let Michael Johnson move around and set his feet, and Michael Johnson's not going to be able to stop Khabib's wrestling. So I think Khabib's a pretty safe bet. Minus 280. I was expecting him to be minus 350 to 400, and I would have taken him there too. Call it the hype train. I think Khabib is the truth, and I think the only guy who can save us from the Khabib apocalypse is Tony Ferguson. So that's going to wrap it up. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at John's Crazy Life. Like my Facebook page, John Lee MMA. And please, if you like this video or if you hated it and think I'm stupid and want people to see how stupid I am, please retweet it, like it. It helps to maybe help me get a job in MMA one day, because right now this is a side thing. And I'd really like to do it because I enjoy it much more than I enjoy my regular job. I know I should just stick to my regular job, much like they tell sports pundits to stick to sports, but alas. Anyway, I'll be back after 205 with a recap video, hopefully, Sunday morning maybe, and then a preview of the next event. Talk to you then.